Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Door Stuck. My name is Bach. I will be your host for the show. Joining me on the show, as always, my good friend and humble companion in the world of Counter-Strike, Mr. Magic Helmet Mitchell. It's been a really, really good week for CS. A lot of news
Ooh,
this week.
super spicy. I've been waiting for this. So when you sent over the topics for today, I thought each topic could probably hold its own weight for its own show. So the fact that we're able to bring these all into one, it's going to be a banger, Mark. I'm ready.
Let's not waste any time with pleasantries. We spent enough time talking to each other already this week. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Looking at our first bit of news. Boom! 100 Thieves confirmed their exit from the world of competitive CS, confirming the rumors after, unfortunately, some of their players went in a different direction. It's a bit of a bummer to see, as there's a lot of talent on that team, and it's not exactly something we'd like to see happen, but it's understandable. Nadeshot goes into a Twitter video explaining that the world of competitive gaming right now is really weird. We don't really know where things are going to end up because land might be coming back, but it's certainly not going to be here. So now it's going to be in Europe, and having to relocate players across continents, that's tough already, given that the roster is Australian, but they're playing in the U.S., so now they have to move Australians from the U.S. to the Europe, and it's like a whole set of just confusion and problems and expenses. So, makes sense, I guess. Just a bummer.
Yeah, it's too bad when you have a brand as strong as 100 Thieves that's able to support a CS:GO team when CS:GO is struggling in general. Number one, because of COVID, but just, Valorant's come in, taking a lot of the spotlight for FPSs, taking a lot of talent from the CS:GO scene. That's primarily more for the semi-pro scene, but regardless, we know there's been an impact from Valorant coming into or creating one of these new games. So, 100 Thieves did a fantastic job supporting them, and I can understand their business decision here. There's a lot of different things that are in play that basically incentivize them or decentivize them from being in the CS:GO team for the time being. And this was a really fun team to watch. JKS number one, he's a really top talent, really fun to watch while he's playing, and the other guys as well. We've been following them for a while, and once they were able to sign that 100 Thieves contract, like that was their big moment. And unfortunately, it's come to an end. And hopefully, they're going to be able to be picked up by another team. Obviously, they're going to have to replace JKS. As pretty sure he was picked up by Complexity as their fifth player. So it's tough to see them leave. And I don't think he's exiting CS:GO for the time being. But regardless, it is what it is. And good luck to JKS specifically on Complexity because I think he's a really good addition.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it's looking like we're going to see him end up. Also, we've seen some players recently move to Valorant, one of whom their former coach, Chet Amapet, deciding
Yeah.
that it was time to move on and potentially find greener pastures in another title, so he moved on to Valorant. And I could see players on this team deciding to do the same thing. I kind of wonder if Jacob is finally going to go home. Like, that man is a
He's been
serious road
around.
warrior. He has been
Yeah.
playing outside of his home country for a long time. He's an honorary Australian at this point. So I'm also curious to see what happens with the rest of this roster. 100 Thieves says they're willing to consider shopping around and finding them a new home. They're not just letting them go. This isn't like this team is just going to get piecemealed and picked apart. They want to see them end up somewhere else. But if JKS is really going to Complexity and Jacob decides to go home, the remainder has kind of an interesting task. And honestly, you have to ask the question: do they just want to go home? Like, do they just want to be back in Australia and be in? I know right now the oceanic scene is in a really interesting spot. In general, it always has been undervalued and had less opportunity than, say, North America or Europe. But the oceanic esports scene just got dealt a blow recently in another title as Riot shut down the Riot offices in Sydney and shuttered up the OPL, which was the Oceanic Pro League. So you're seeing that kind of get peeled back a lot as it's seen as one of the areas where you could easily regain some of the money you're losing because of COVID.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a lot of big decisions coming up for some of these players, the ones especially that aren't going to be going to another team. Valorant is a good option, but
Yeah,
as you mentioned, it's tough for the Australians to get opportunities relative to if they
yeah.
were American or lived in America. So, they could stick it out in America, and they might have to get their own place for the time being until they're able to be picked up by another team. But regardless, tough situation. but I think they'll eventually land somewhere that they'll be happy with.
So let's take a look at the next piece of news. Going ahead and jumping on over more European news coming out as Evil Geniuses is set to complete a European trip that will take them all the way to Serbia to begin competition on European soil. Pretty interesting. I mean, that is a huge leap to go from competing inside North America to now competing exclusively in Europe. It's obviously based around what we've been hearing with the CSPPA reaching some. I'm trying to think of the word.
Agreement.
Yeah, I mean they reach an agreement, but it's all about guidelines. There's the word I'm looking for. Guidelines for
Yep.
COVID protocols to make sure that everyone stays safe and protected while competing at these supposedly upcoming lands, which just can't take place in U.S. But if you actually scroll down a little bit in this article, the most interesting nugget comes right after the picture. EG are the first to confirm that move. Liquid, 100 Thieves, and MIBR were all expected to do the same, as 3 other North American-based organizations partnered with Blast. Now, obviously, 100 Thieves just exited, so that's not happening.
Yeah.
MIBR doesn't even have a roster, so, like, what?
It's blowing up quick before the story even starts. Basically, 100 Thieves
Yeah.
and MIBR are pretty much out. You're gonna have to find 2 teams to come in and replace them. And I think CS:GO is dead for the most part. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
more towards the semi-pro scene, but it's struggling really hard. So I don't know if it's going to be a situation where Blast ends up getting teams from CIS or maybe some more EU teams if they can't find the right replacements to go out to EU. I like that they're going out and trying to create a safe place and safe environment to put on lands. I want lands back, and it certainly can't happen in NA for the time being because we all know how COVID has been kind of ravaging the country. And, I don't really see any sign of that slowing down anytime
Yeah.
soon, which is obviously really unfortunate. So I like the idea that EG is going to go out there. I think it's the wisest decision if they want to get on land, be able to participate in these events where there isn't, a really high ping. So cool of them to be willing to go out there, and it's going to be able to provide content for people at home while they're at home during COVID. So it's cool that we'll be getting some more high level CS in person, hopefully. But yeah, they have some decisions to make as well because of 100 Thieves dropping out and MIPR not having that team. I'll be curious to see what their solution is going to be.
So here's the other thing that this does too. If we have now multiple top North American teams in EG and Liquid potentially moving over to Europe, what happens to all the North American teams, like the remainder? Those that are left behind on North American soil are now going to be competing in what would be
Who
perceived
are they
as
playing?
much weaker competition. You're going to see opportunities for some of the up-and-coming teams. I look at teams like Triumph or Chaos, or right now, honestly, New England Whalers, who put on an
Yes.
impressive show at IEM New York. Those teams are going to have opportunities now with these teams leaving vacancies. And I just kind of wonder what the scene's going to look like. And let's not forget, too, that Gen G recently just lost Sam and Daps. So, we're seeing that take place simultaneously with what's going on elsewhere. So it's going to be really interesting, to say the least. The next couple of months in CS are going to be telling. Someone mentioned it in chat. Remember when people were wondering if Valorant was going to destabilize CS:GO? I mean, look at the effect that both Valorant and COVID has had on it. It shows you the fragility of the scene. Moving on, though, this one is real interesting. LMBT'S ban lifted by ESIC. So Lambert, the former coach of Hellraisers and also Mousesports, now currently the assistant coach of Forza, received a ban based on the ESIC investigation into the notorious coaching bug, but had ample evidence to back up that he did not exploit the bug and presented all of it to ESIC, which begs the question, how many other people got banned but don't have that evidence to back up their claims of innocence when they actually are? And how many people in total will be hit by this that actually did nothing wrong but were affected, unfortunately, by the bug? We brought this up when we talked about it a few weeks ago. What are the possibilities that this could happen to you and you didn't exploit it, it just happened, but you could get punished?
Yeah, I mean, great news for LMBT. He was one of the coaches that got banned for a significantly longer time than the rest of them, 7.5 months. So congratulations to him. Clearly, he didn't do anything he wasn't supposed to do. This kind of delivers a hit to ESIC and his credibility in a little bit of a manner because They had banned him for 7.5 months, and he was able to provide the evidence that he didn't use, the exploits. And as you mentioned, how many of the other ones are in the same situation? They just don't have that evidence. One thing I would like to see is what was the evidence that was provided, so the other coaches can then go determine, okay, I'm able to collect this data, collect this evidence, that basically was able to be used to get somebody else banned, and I can leverage that to try and get myself unbanned. Because, I'm wondering how many of these coaches actually cheated. There was a long list, and it was hard to believe that many coaches had really cheated and weren't, credible coaches were willing to cheat. But regardless, this is a tough situation for ESIC, but I do appreciate the fact that they were willing to unban him and, review the evidence and not just, push it to the side.
So one thing that people don't necessarily know is that Lambert also acts as an analyst and a broadcaster. So he does work in the CIS region in studios for Russian language broadcasts, if I'm not mistaken. And he claimed and had video backing it up, because it's a broadcast studio, that he was not even actually in the game, and he was actually watching the game on his phone. So, like, he wasn't even able to be at the computer. So that was the main point of evidence. In the other instances where it occurred and he actually was at his computer, he instantly disconnected or quickly disconnected and reported the problem to admins. So he was able to present proof, screenshots, video evidence, real legitimate proof. But the problem is, how many people have that? Not many. Like, how many players record that stuff? The fact that Gary had that evidence to back up his claims is ridiculous. Like, recordings of voice comms and illustrating, hey, I didn't do this on purpose. It just happened, and I tried to get away from it as fast as I could. That's not available to everyone. So now people are going to be living like Big Brother world, and they're going to be recording everything because they feel like it makes the most sense.
Yeah, certainly put it into a tough situation there. It's good that he's been able to get unbanned, and it's lucky that he had the evidence, because, as you mentioned, there aren't other coaches that have that ability. Actually, kind of remind me of an old story where there was a guy that got accused of murder who ended up not being the person who did it. But the only way they found it was a Curb Your Enthusiasm show where he was at a Dodgers game, and they had been going through the stadium shooting some film, and they found him during the same time that the murder happened. So it's lucky that he was able to go back and have that evidence. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Good on him. Yeah, you should look up the story. It's pretty interesting.
That's
like
wild.
He was ready to be locked up, but they basically reached out to the Curb Your Enthusiasm producers and said, like, hey, you guys were at this game. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be on the film. If you can dig into the crates and find this for me, you basically saved my life. And they did. It's an incredible story.
That's
obviously
wild.
Terrible, but yeah.
But incredible nonetheless. Speaking of incredible stories, the final one that we're going to touch base on today, literally all of this happened this week, by the way, within like a span of 4 days. Astralis has confirmed that ESIC will be joining Cloud9. So the fabled 28-man roster that Astralis was trying to build takes a step in the opposite direction. That whole project has been so confusing. I still have not been able to make heads or tails of what they're trying to do over at Astralis. But they signed ESIC. That was the first player they brought in. So they bring in ESIC early on, have to wait until his FPX thing dies, and then the team falls apart. So, I mean, Astralis effectively killed FPX or Heroic at the time. They effectively killed that team to a certain degree, destroying their chances of competing in Flashpoint. That was right at the beginning of COVID, by the way. I remember going through all that. So they made this huge deal, this landfall deal to bring ESIC in, and then it doesn't really seem to work out too much. He doesn't last too long with the team. A deal comes in and gives him an opportunity to jump over and join Cloud9. I don't blame Astralis for that. Henry G has been very aggressive with the opportunities he's been providing players and how he's gone after those that he wanted. We recently saw our boy Floppy, Ricky Kemery, getting on that roster. Happy to see that. So he's going to be competing with some of the best international players in the world and a guy from the UK as well. So get it? I said best players in the world and a guy from the UK. That's a jab.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, no, that one went over my head, but I got you now, and that is fantastic content right there. So Astralis, they probably made a buttload of money off this, selling him to Cloud9, because if you saw the deal, I'm pretty sure it was the number one or the biggest deal of all time for CS:GO. At least that's what the
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 rumors.
agency that they used,
Yeah.
boasted it as. Whether or not there's some deal that wasn't made public was bigger, I don't know. But regardless, that's what's being claimed. So they had to make a decent money off the buyout, and they didn't have to have him on the roster all that long. So the amount of time they dedicated to help building him up, getting him integrated into the team, and then you can flip it for what, half a mil or something like that. Incredible. So congratulations to Astralis. I don't know how much they really wanted ESIC to be integrated into the team and how much he would have been playing, but regardless, it ends up pretty well for them, unless they had anticipated on keeping him for a while and making him a core part to that team. But yeah, no, I love what Henry G has been doing. He's done a fantastic job building that roster. We talked a little bit before the show on kind of what our expectations for that team is, and I think it's going to be fantastic. I'm really excited to see them start to get into some matches to see what they're really made of. But that's going to be a spicy team to watch out for.
I mean, they've got good leadership in Henry G and Kassad. Alex will be a fantastic in-game leader.
Yep.
The pieces that I worry about is, one, communication. You've got a player who is from Norway. You've got a player, or not, no, Norway, Denmark, excuse me. So you've got a Danish player, you've got a Turkish player, you've got an American and two Brits, along with a Serbian coach. It's an interesting mix, to say the least. But my concern is that a player like Floppy or Alex will speak too fast, and Woxic will have a hard time kind of taking that information in, because again, his English is okay. I've heard him speak English, and it's actually pretty good, but it's like in the heat of the moment, how does that translate? Like, does that information come through? It's something we've always talked about. What's the communication barrier going to be like between these players? But I also kind of wonder, like, what the dynamic of the team is going to look like. It's really interesting. Like, when you look at the background for someone like Alex, prior to his time on Vitality, Alex's biggest achievement was being a part of the LDLC roster that had made it into Pro League, and then kind of didn't really go much further than that. They were kind of at the bottom of the barrel in Pro League when they competed in that division. So he ends up joining with Vitality, and they become at one point the best team in the world. According to HLTV rankings, they were the number one team in the world. They make their debut with their full five-man roster at DreamHack Atlanta, and we watch we watch them like crush the competition and completely just stomp everyone, largely in part to an incredible performance from Zywoo. His LAN debut, where he like put up ridiculous stats. I think it was like a 1.4 HLTV rating across the whole event, or something absurd like that. He had like 100, right, like 120 ADR the entire tournament. It just like ridiculous numbers that you would never expect to see. Stats that actually put him on par with a player like Simple. And in fact, when we interviewed NBK about it at one point, he said, "I think he will be like the next Simple," and he wasn't wrong. Like, Zywoo was nuts. The team continued on their path, but then things just kind of stalled out, and Alex looked for a new opportunity, ends up linking up with Henry G. And Mezzi is an interesting addition. I'm not really sure like what that's going to look like. I don't think that he's a terrible player, but compared to even like Floppy, those two players are on different points and different wavelengths. Floppy obviously spent some time competing in North America with the former Cloud9 roster, and while they never found massive success, they were at least able to find some nuggets here and there. Woxic, great Turkish opper. Everyone knows what to expect from him. ESIC, a fantastic player in his own right as well. The team can be good. It's just, how do the pieces fit together? Because this is something I've said before. A team is more than the sum of its parts. It's not 1 + 2 + 3. It doesn't work that way. You have to see how the pieces fit together.
Got to be a cohesive unit.
Yeah, there's a dynamic there, and synergy is important. And I'm curious how long they'll work with this before you see a change, because they've been very public and open about all these numbers being thrown around, and there is a lot of money currently spent on this roster.
Joke,
like, a lot of money. I think the current estimation on buyouts is like 1.7 million, and then the estimation of monthly payout salaries is $165,000. That's how absurd Counter-Strike is currently. $165,000 per month for this roster.
And I think they want one more. Bringing on a sixth.
Yeah, they want one more.
Player. Yeah. And I wonder if they're including the coach number in that too. I mean, just think about the operational cost for this type of team. Incredible. I love that C9's basically going all in on this to create a new team that they think is going to be, I assume, number one in the world. And I hope that's what happens, because I'm a Cloud9 fanboy. But yeah, it's going to be fun to watch it all unfold. They got some really good players. I really hope Floppy's able to shine with all the other big name players on the team. and should be pretty cool to see him, man.
Well, that's going to wrap things up for us today on the show, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It was a lot of news to break through, but I hope you found at least some of what we said insightful, if not all of it. I mean, maybe you liked what Mitch said more than me. It's cool. I'll totally be fine with that. If you guys want to tell us that, go ahead head over to our social media platforms. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It's NERDST Gamers. You can find us on all three. Our show is live every Friday at noon on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook as well. So if you prefer to digest on a different platform, you can find it there. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, whatever the pertinent action would be, so you get those notifications and you know when we go live. You can also follow me and Mitch, Magic Helmet TV, and the recently coined Bachcasts, no longer Bach TV. I actually have to update my lower third because I think it still says Bach TV and I forgot. But we'll get that fixed another time in another place. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We hope to see you next time.